Imagine you are standing on a baseball field on a warm summer afternoon. The grass is cut short, the dirt is dry, and the air is still. You are holding a baseball in your hand. You feel the weight of it, the stitching against your fingers. You wind up, and you throw it as hard as you can toward the outfield. Watch the ball. It leaves your hand at 100 kilometers per hour. It rises into the air, fighting gravity. It curves over the peak of its flight. It begins to fall, picking up speed until it smacks into the glove of a player 80 meters away. It traces a perfect, elegant arc against the blue sky, a parabola. Now stop the tape. Freeze that ball at the very top of its arc and ask yourself a question that sounds simple but is actually profound enough to break the minds of the greatest philosophers in history. How did the ball know to do that? If you could zoom in on the ball and ask it, why are you here? Why are you at this specific height at this specific time? What would it say? If you ask Isaac Newton, the father of classical physics, he gives you a very sensible mechanical answer. He says, the ball has no brain. It doesn't know anything. It has no plan. At every single instant, gravity is pulling it down a tiny bit, and its own momentum is carrying it forward a tiny bit. It is being pushed from behind, moment by moment, like a blind man feeling his way along a wall. According to Newton, the ball doesn't know where it is going to land. It only knows what is happening to it right now. The past pushes the present into the future. This is the world of cause and effect. It is a world of gears and levers. It makes sense. But there is another way to look at it. In the 18th century, physicists discovered a different law. They found that if you ignore the forces moment by moment and instead look at the entire path as a whole, from your hand to the outfield glove, something miraculous appears. They found that if you calculate a strange mathematical quantity called action, a number that represents the energy balance of the ball takes a very specific path out of all the infinite paths it could take. It could zigzag like a lightning bolt. It could loop-de-loop. It could fly to the moon and back. It could stop in midair and have a cup of tea. It chooses the one single path, the one specific parabola that uses the least amount of action. It looks like the ball calculates the cost of every possible path before it starts, compares them all, finds the cheapest one, and then decides to follow it. This implies something impossible. It implies that the ball knows the future. How can a dumb lump of leather and cork know where it is going to land before it even leaves your hand? To choose the best path to the destination, you have to know where the destination is. But the ball hasn't arrived yet. It looks like the future is pulling the present. It looks like the ball has a goal. When Richard Feynman was in high school, his physics teacher, a man named Mr. Bader, called him aside one day. He said, "Feynman, you look bored with the regular class. Come here. I want to show you something interesting." He drew this curve on the board. He explained the principle of least action, and Feynman later wrote that he shook with excitement. He felt like he was seeing the mind of God. He realized that the universe isn't just a machine grinding forward. It is something much more elegant. It is a universe that explores all possibilities and chooses the best one. Today we are going to explore the principle of least action. We are going to look at the laziness of the universe. We are going to solve the Lifeguard Paradox. And we are going to find out how a beam of light can be smarter than a human being. Let's start with a situation you might know. Let's talk about light. Imagine you are sitting at a restaurant and you order a glass of water with a straw in it. You look at the glass from the side. The straw looks broken. It looks bent at the surface of the water. We learn in school that this is called refraction. Light travels in a straight line through the air, but when it hits the water, it changes direction. It bends. Now, why does it bend? If you ask a standard textbook, it says, because the speed of light changes. Light is faster in air, which is thin, and slower in water, which is dense. Because it slows down, the wavefront pivots like a car hitting mud with one wheel. But in the 1600s, a French mathematician named Pierre de Fermat came up with a different, more brilliant idea. He ignored the mechanism. He looked at the result. He said, light travels between 2 points by the path that takes the least time, not the shortest distance, the shortest time. Let's clarify the difference. A straight line is the shortest distance between 2 points. If light wanted to be efficient with distance, it would just go straight. But it doesn't. It bends. Why? Imagine you are a lifeguard on a beach. You are sitting in your tall white chair on the sand. Suddenly you hear a scream. You look out at the ocean. You see a swimmer drowning. Now look at the geometry. The swimmer is not directly in front of you. They are diagonally down the beach, say 50 meters down the shoreline and 30 meters out into the water. You need to get to them as fast as possible. A life is at stake. What path do you take? You could run in a straight line directly toward them. That is the shortest distance. But think about it. If you run in a straight line, you spend a lot of time in the water. And humans run much faster on hard sand than they swim in water. If you take the straight line, you are maximizing the slow part of your journey. Alternatively, you could run all the way down the beach until you are directly opposite the swimmer, and then turn 90 degrees and swim out. That minimizes the swimming distance. You spend almost all your time on the fast sand, but it makes the total trip too long. You're running too far out of your way. The fastest path, the optimal path, is a compromise. It is somewhere in the middle. You run a little bit longer on the sand to take advantage of your speed so that you have a shorter distance to swim. You enter the water at a specific angle. You bend your path at the water's edge. If you sit down with a piece of paper and calculus and you calculate the exact angle a lifeguard should take to reach the swimmer in the absolute minimum amount of time, you get a specific number. And here is the magic. If you shine a laser beam from the lifeguard tower to the drowning swimmer, the light bends at exactly that angle. Light behaves like an intelligent lifeguard. But wait, stop and think about how weird this is. The lifeguard has a brain. The lifeguard has eyes. The lifeguard can look at the swimmer, look at the water, estimate his running speed versus his swimming speed, perform a mental calculation, and choose the path. He plans ahead. Light is a photon. It is a tiny packet of electromagnetic energy. It has no brain, it has no eyes, it has no calculator, it has no map. When the photon leaves the laser pointer in the air, how does it know where the destination is? How does it know that the swimmer is over there? To choose the fastest path, you need to know the start point and the end point. But the light hasn't reached the end point yet. It is just starting its journey. It seems like the light sniffs out all the possible paths, realizes which one is the fastest, and then decides to start moving on that one. It seems like the cause, the angle of refraction, is determined by the effect, getting there quickly. This implies teleology. Teleology is the philosophical idea that things happen because they serve a purpose or a goal. It is the opposite of mechanism, which says things happen because they were pushed. For centuries, this drove scientists and philosophers crazy. It felt like proof of God. It felt like proof that the universe was conscious. Why else would nature always be so incredibly efficient? Why is nature so lazy? It never wastes energy. It never wastes time. It always finds the optimal solution. Feynman loved this mystery. He didn't see it as magic. He saw it as a clue. He realized that this laziness wasn't just about light. It was about everything. Let's go back to the baseball. The light minimizes time. What does the baseball minimize? It minimizes a quantity called action. What is action? It's a little technical, but bear with me because the concept is beautiful. Every object has two kinds of energy. Kinetic energy, the energy of motion. This is high when you are going fast. Potential energy, the energy of position. This is high when you are high up in the air. The action is defined as the difference between them. Kinetic energy minus potential energy, summed up over the whole flight. S. Jurjasnint, K-E-P-E. Did the principle of least action says, nature creates history such that S is minimized. If you throw the ball and it takes the parabolic path, the quantity $dollars is small. If you imagine the ball taking a different path, say shooting up very fast like a rocket and then stopping, then dropping like a stone, the kinetic energy would be huge at the start. The potential energy would be weird. And if you did the math, the value, dollars, would be huge. Nature is a penny pincher. Nature hates spending action. So the baseball, just like the light, finds the cheapest path through reality. But Feynman kept coming back to the same nagging question. How does the particle find the right path? If I am a baseball and I am flying through the air, how do I know if I am on the parabola? I don't have a GPS. I don't have a computer. I am just a rock. If I drift slightly to the left, does the universe punish me? Does the universe nudge me back? Feynman found the answer by abandoning the world of baseballs and diving into the world of atoms. He found the answer in quantum mechanics. And this brings us back to our old friend, the double-slit experiment. In our previous videos, we talked about the famous experiment where an electron goes through two holes at the same time. We learned that particles are not solid lumps. They are waves of probability. Feynman realized that this is the key to the principle of least action. The universe does not choose the best path. The universe takes all paths. Listen closely, because this is the idea that won Feynman the Nobel Prize. When you throw the baseball actually does explore every possible trajectory. The baseball is a quantum object, a very big one, but still a quantum object. According to quantum mechanics, the baseball does not follow a single line. It follows a sum over histories. There is a ghost baseball that flies to Mars, circles the red planet, and comes back to the outfielder's glove. There is a ghost baseball that drops straight down to the center of the Earth and pops back up. There is a ghost baseball that travels to the Andromeda Galaxy. There is a ghost baseball that loops around your head 3 times before flying forward. The baseball takes all of them simultaneously. But, and this is the big but, each of these paths is a wave, and waves have a property called phase. They wiggle up and down. For the baseball to actually exist at the end, all these waves have to arrive and add up. They have to interfere constructively. Feynman did the math. He calculated the phase for all those crazy paths, the path to Mars, the path to the moon. He found that for any path that is far away from the parabola, the phase spins wildly. The path that goes to Mars interferes destructively with the path that goes slightly to the left of Mars. One wave is up. The neighbor wave is down. They cancel each other out. The path to the moon cancels out with the path slightly next to the moon. The crazy, inefficient, expensive paths annihilate each other in a frenzy of quantum interference. They kill each other off. They sum to zero. There is only one region in the entire universe where the paths don't cancel each other out. There is only one region where all the neighbor paths have almost the same phase, so they add up and reinforce each other. And where is that region? It is right smack in the middle. It is the path where the action is stationary. It is the path of least action. It is the parabola. The miracle of the baseball knowing the future isn't a miracle at all. It is a democracy. The baseball tries everything, trillions of paths, infinite variations. But the only paths that survive the vote, the only paths that add up to a solid reality, are the ones that follow the rules of efficiency. The classical world, the world of Newton, the world of parabolas, the world of straight lines, is just the constructive interference of a billion quantum possibilities. We see the parabola because that is the only place where the universe didn't cancel itself out. Feynman called this the path integral formulation, and it changes how we see reality. It means that the path doesn't exist. When you drive your car to work, you think you drove down one specific road. You remember the traffic lights, you remember the turns, but according to Feynman, your car explored every road in the city. It explored roads on the moon. It explored roads in the past and the future, but because your car is big and heavy, the action for those crazy paths is huge, and the phases spun around billions of times, and they canceled out instantly. The only path that survived was the one where you stayed on the highway. Reality is the sum of all possibilities. The law of physics is just the average of the chaos. This explains the lifeguard mystery of light. Why does light take the fastest path? Because it took every path. It took the slow paths. It took the medium paths. It took the zigzag paths. But the waves from the slow paths arrived out of sync. They arrived out of phase. One arrived zig, one arrived zag. They canceled each other out. That is why you see darkness in those directions. The waves from the fastest path arrived in sync. They marched in step. They amplified each other. That is why you see the beam of light. The beam of light doesn't know the future. The beam of light is everywhere at once. And the only place it survives is the place where it makes sense. This idea that the laws of physics are not rigid commands, but statistical results, was Feynman's greatest contribution to science. It connects the weirdness of the quantum world to the solidity of our everyday world. It shows that the classical world is just what happens when you zoom out from the quantum world. Think about the implications for destiny. We often feel like we are being pushed by the past. We feel like billiard balls. Dollars, cause and effect. I am here because I was there yesterday, but the principle of least action flips the perspective. It says, you get from A to B by minimizing the cost. The entire journey matters. The destination defines the path just as much as the start does. Feynman often talked about how this made him feel connected to the universe. It meant that nature isn't just a blind machine stumbling forward. Nature is a vast, exploring web of possibilities, constantly sniffing out the most elegant solution. It creates a universe that looks lazy. It always does the easiest thing. But to achieve that laziness, it has to work infinitely hard behind the scenes, exploring every other option just to rule them out. To make a ball fly in a simple arc, the universe has to calculate paths to the edge of the cosmos and back, just to ensure they cancel out. The simplicity of the parabola is built on a foundation of infinite complexity. So, the next time you see a beam of light bending in a glass of water, or the next time you watch a basketball swish through a net, don't just see a moving object. Don't just see a blind rock obeying gravity. See the ghost paths. See the infinite failures that were tried and discarded in the blink of an eye. See the universe making a choice, and realize that the path of reality is simply the path of least resistance through a jungle of infinite dreams. Feynman taught us that the miracle isn't that the universe knows the future. The miracle is that out of the chaos of everything that could happen, something specific does happen, and it happens with a beauty and precision that no human engineer could ever match. The universe is lazy. The universe is efficient. But most of all, the universe is everywhere.